So just like almost everybody else in the world right now, I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV. This isn't like a super recent thing for me since I kind of started playing back when A Realm Reborn first came out, but I haven't really kept up with it and had a bit of catching up to do, especially since I wanted to play Bloodborne in my Final Fantasy come Endwalker. Needless to say, I very much enjoy the game. It's got a great story, fun classes to play, and a nice community that will welcome you with open arms. Unless you skip those cutscenes. But I do have one issue with the game. It's not really a big issue, but it is something that has plagued both me and my friends since we first started playing the game. In fact, I'm the only one of my friends still playing this game because this unfortunate problem has gatekept them. And it's Lullafels.
Oh no.
Their maniacal misdeeds have gone unpunished for far too long. Just kidding. What I really wanted to talk with you all about is my problem with the main story quest, or MSQs, as everyone calls them. And no, it's not the story or anything like that because let me be clear, I really do love the story of this game, especially Shadowbringers. This has been my favorite story yet. It's a small yet big thing that can be solved, I think, pretty easily. But before I get there, I need to go back. Back to a simpler time. Back to a time when Final Fantasy XIV was about to embark on a brand new future. It had finally burned down what remained of the old trash fire heap that it was, and was beginning a brand new world. A realm reborn. Me and my close friend, who we'll just call Steve for the sake of simplicity, had pre-ordered the game and were getting excited. We had played Final Fantasy XI together all throughout our middle school and high school years to maintain our innocence and our virginity, and we were ready to waste away our adult lives locked up in our rooms with nothing but our Cheetos, sweaty socks, and our cat girls. We made our way through the game together, leveling up, dungeoning, unlocking chocobos, and Steve showing off his much cooler coral mount that he got from spending more money on the extra super special cool neckbeard deluxe version of the game, but whatever. And eventually we hit level 50. We began our relic quests together, me as the musical and flamboyant bard, and him as the battle-hardened warrior. We went through trial after trial until we got our class signature weapons. Or at least the first part of it before it starts glowing and looking all cool and shit. Then together we tried out the brand new, first of its kind 24-man raid. And then Steve quit. To this day, it's unclear why Steve would ever leave this life behind. I don't know, something about school and exams and needing to get a job in the real world or some crazy nonsense like that. But I pressed on. I started doing some of the Bahamut raids and doing random stuff with my FC at the time. I even started leveling Dragoon as I began to realize that bards are for pansy ass bitches. But then I too decided to quit. I thought it was about time that I stepped outside of my dark and sweaty room to see what the world was like on the other side of that door and maybe lose that virginity I held on to all these years for my beautiful cat girls. A short while passed, I don't know how long because it was ages ago, but Heavensward was announced. I turned to Steve and pointed, "Look, this one has dragons!" And he was like, "You're right. We have no choice. We must return." And so we did. And how naive we were. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. So on the day of Heavensward's release, both me and Steve logged back in for the first time in months. Maybe even a year. We were once again filled with excitement and anticipation. Dragons! We get to fight dragons! We organized our action bars and began to look for the path to Ishgard and the rest of the new content in the expansion. A few hours passed and I turned to Steve and I asked him, "Have you gotten into Heavensward yet?" "I haven't," he replied. In my dismay and sheer desperation, I turned to another old friend, Google. I typed in how to get into Heavensward. That's when we discovered this perilous mountain we had to climb to reach those precious, precious dragons. A mountain so dangerous that many have fallen in their attempts to climb over its dangerous cliffs. After a few days of making this climb, I once again lost Steve. I can still hear his last words ringing loud and clear in my ears to this day. "Go on without me. I know you can do it. Give those dragons enough jumps for the both of us. And so, I pressed on. But after a few days, the journey proved even too dangerous for me. I had to resort to more extreme measures, and I did the unthinkable. That's right, guys, I skipped the shit out of these cutscenes. But holy crap, man. Did you know that there were 80 post-game story quests that you have to go through before you can even step foot into any of the areas in Heavensward? 80! That's freaking insane! And before you get your pitchforks out, I did go back and watch what happened in those cutscenes. Well, the important ones at least, so I understand what's going on, but I wanted to fight some dragons, damn it! And fight some dragons I did. I even fully re-rolled into Dragoon in this expansion and got the full Estinian experience, and it was great, and I had a lot of fun. But eventually, as I tend to do with these MMO games, I got to level 60, and played it for a bit in the end game, and then eventually quit until the next expansion came out. And as you could probably imagine at this point, I ran into the same problem with Stormblood that I did in Heavensward. Only this time, I had to face it alone. Steve was still dead on that terrible mountain back in A Realm Reborn, so I sunk to even lower measures. I bought a boost. Now, I get it. Final Fantasy XIV is a very story-driven game, and because of that, it has arguably the best story in an MMORPG that I've seen. But when I come back to play a new expansion in a game, I want to play the new expansion. I don't want to be dragged through the aftermath of the last expansion for 10 hours before I get to play the shiny new toy. I want the shiny new toy! It's shiny! Admittedly, the Heavensward MSQ grind is significantly shorter than A Realm Reborn's was, but I had already been scarred. This game does a really good job of letting you play the game how you want to and at your own pace for a lot of different things. But this is not one of them. The game already takes a really long time to get going when you first start playing. Why do they need to make it harder to get going for a new or returning player? Now, I want to say it's not about getting to the end game as fast as possible or anything like that. Final Fantasy XIV is not about that, nor should it ever be. It just kind of feels like all my progression and pacing in the game is halted as I'm forced to do what feels like a series of side missions until I can get back to the main game. And I know not all of these quests are bad, but there do seem to be a lot of unnecessary ones in these post-game MSQs. And this does create a few other problems as well. For one, it locks content behind walls such as jobs, crafting, and gathering. Just leveling in general is kind of halted because you can't really access the new areas without finishing these quests first. So I had another friend, we'll call this one Jeff, who started playing with me again when I first came back to Shadowbringers to start prepping for Endwalker. He didn't really enjoy the main story quest, but he's really not the type of player that ever really enjoyed leveling in any game, period. But he really enjoyed the crafting and gathering in this game. So instead, he focused on that and playing the auction house market. That was until he hit level 50 and he couldn't go and gather all the materials for his crafting professions because they were locked behind that terrible mountain of death my friend Steve was still rotting on. Jeff, too, eventually quit because he couldn't go do the part of the game he enjoyed, because he had to do the part of the game he didn't enjoy to get there. The game already allows you to go back and watch these scenes at any point in time at any inn. You shouldn't be forced to finish post-game content for an old expansion if you don't want to, but instead should be allowed to go back at any time. But I think I have a pretty elegant solution to this conundrum we have here. When you finally complete the last quest in the main story quest before getting to the quest added by the patch updates throughout the expansion, give the player a little notification that says, do you wish to proceed to Heavensward or Stormblood or wherever the next expansion you're going to is? And when they click yes, play a brief cutscene that summarizes the important events covered in these post-game quests. You could pretty easily cover these events in 5 minutes or less. Even the 80 freaking quests from A Realm Reborn. And then let the player enter the new area. You can always go back and experience these scenes in full later, and even go back and play the old dungeons and trials of that expansion. But just give the player a choice. Not everyone wants to sit through that much dialogue or cutscenes, and even some that do, like me, can get worn out by the sheer amount that you have to wade through. And this problem only gets worse and worse with each new expansion that comes out. I managed to come back, even though I had not only Shadowbringers to go through, but also most of Stormblood too, before I could get ready for Endwalker. But I would like to see some of my friends possibly return to the game. And as it is now, I'll never see them step foot in Eorzea again, due to all the quests they have to grind through. Death Mountain will forever remain as a graveyard for the brave adventurer Steve, and the industrious crafter Jeff, who died from a heart attack at the foot of the mountain just from looking at it. Anyways, Endwalker's finally out, and I've been enjoying myself so far, playing the new Reaper class and embracing the edge. Well, that is when I get through these queues. If you made it this far in the video, try hitting that subscribe button, and stay tuned for more videos in the future. And let me know what your thoughts are on Endwalker, or how wrong you think I am about MSQs and how 80 freaking quests in between expansions aren't enough in the comments below. And I'll see you all in the next one.